Welcome to the Facts versus Feelings podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Detrick, and I'm joined by my co-host, Sonu Varghese.
Cutting through the noise in 30 minutes each week, taking out the boring and helping investors focus on what really matters. A quick note before we start the show. Investment advisory services offered through CWM LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Carson Partners, a division of CWM LLC, is a nationwide partnership of advisors.
Hi everyone, welcome to the latest edition of Carson's Facts versus Feelings with Ryan and Sonu, live on location in Omaha at the Spring Partners Summit. I'm Ryan Detrick, the Chief Market Strategist, joined by Sonu Varghese, VP, Global Macro Strategist. Is that the right title?
I'm glad you said it.
Yeah. Okay.
I still find myself catching a beat before I finish that whole thing.
And we are really excited and honored to be joined by our friend, partner, confidant, runner yesterday. We'll talk about that for
Yes.
a second. Larry Sprung. Larry, maybe give your title just to make sure no one gets mad at us, and we're honored you're here.
Well, mine's not as long as Sonu's, but thanks for having me. I'm honored to be here as well. I'm Larry Sprung, and I am founder and wealth advisor at Midland Financial.
So let's start with the thing everybody wants to hear. You ran yesterday, and as we're sitting here, we might have to massage your thighs because you're hurting right now, right, Larry? When's the last time you ran?
Probably 25 years ago, and I don't know if you could consider it running. I was heavy jog maybe, but yeah, the quads are feeling it today. But
You're a Peloton rider, right?
I am a Peloton rider. Much different muscles, as I could tell you from yesterday, for sure.
Well, we're really excited. Sonu, why don't you start with kind of a softball for Larry? But Larry, we're just excited to get to chat with you today for about 30 minutes on our latest Facts versus Feelings podcast. Just an honor to have you.
And I must say, thank you for the book, Financial Planning. This is fantastic. I just speed read the entire thing yesterday. That's when Larry got me the book. But no, thank you. I'm just going to ask you the one straight on, what's written right up here. What did you do today that brought you joy?
Well, listen, being here is bringing me a lot of joy, and just the fact that I'm getting to spend a half hour with both of you, and who I consider some of the smartest people in our profession, I think is amazing. And that's my goal, is to get a little bit of joy every day.
No, thank you for that.
So how long, just so the listeners know, we say our Carson Partners advisors, right? That's another word for that for listeners that don't quite understand. So how long have you been a Carson partner?
Yeah, so I've been in the partnership, or I should say our team, and Midland's been part of the partnership for about 2.5 years now, and we're excited to be here for sure.
And you're a huge advocate, of course, of Carson Group and the way you help your clients. You have a podcast. You do so much with social media. I've come on your podcast before, and it's just so much fun. I mean, what's your favorite part about being a financial advisor?
Yeah, being an advisor for me is just being able to help families, working with them, seeing what their goals and objectives are, what brings them joy, right? And helping them facilitate that and actually execute that is probably the most rewarding part of being a financial advisor and in this profession.
That's great. And I was just wondering, so your firm is Midland Financial, the podcast is Midland Money. So why Midland? Your name is Larry and Sprung, I know. Denise, your lovely wife, is Denise Milano, right? So where's the Midland from?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I will tell you that is the most asked question we get, because you would think, being in this profession, people ask, well, how much do I need for retirement? How much do I need for my child's education? No, the most asked question is, where did Midland come from? So it was our first podcast. We did explain it there. It is also explained in the book, Financial Planning Made Personal. But the short version of it is MIT was my wife's grandfather, Mitchell. LIN was my mother, Linda. They passed away within a few hours of each other, literally, and then I met my wife several months later. And when we were figuring a name for the firm, we really wanted it to mean something. I didn't want it to be my last name and live within the confines of my life. I wanted it to be in a situation where it would potentially live beyond me. And Mitchell, who was my wife's grandfather, a really good guy. He was one of those, he was a New York City police officer, veteran. And
World War II?
World War II. You know what? I'm not sure. I don't think World War II. I think he was Vietnam, perhaps.
Okay.
Yeah. And just a real good guy. He was the kind of guy when the ice cream man came down the street, bought ice cream for everybody. Not because he was wealthy, but he got a lot of joy out of that. And my mom was a fighter. She, real well respected, battled cancer for about 13 years. Wow. And I saw her, battle through that. And she had such good relationships and friends and people around her and just good values. So we thought no better way than to honor these two people and name the firm after them. And it also is a great story. And then my wife and I found each other, and we're still together and married now 23 years. So,
no, that's great. Obviously, listeners know my mother passed away from breast cancer, a long battle as well. And a lot of people send you notes, and it's just great. But Larry, like, you called me. Not too many people, and I'm not calling anybody out here. I'm just saying, you called me and said, "I'm really sorry about your mom." That just was a little extra special thing. So just thank you for that little extra.
You're
thing.
welcome.
I appreciated that. So I mean, there's a rumor going around, Larry, that you live at an ice rink. Is that true? Where do you live? Because apparently you live watching hockey games.
I do have a house, but I'm not there very often. But I am in a rink quite a bit. I guess you can't say I live in a rink, because I'm at different rinks all the time. But I mean, listen, for anybody who's listening who has young children or older children that are looking at playing hockey, just understand it's more than just a sport. It's really a lifestyle, and it was something I grew up with, and now my boys have picked up on their own, and they're having successes in their own right. And we spend a lot of time in hockey rinks all the way, cross country. So a lot of fun.
One more, then Sonu, you can jump in. I believe your oldest son just played for a national championship, or he was in the Final Four, right?
My younger
Okay,
son just played at nationals out in California. He lost in the quarterfinals. It was a little bit disheartening for him because the team result wasn't there, but personally he had some great successes which are propelling him to the next level, which is great.
That's fantastic. Congratulations to him as well. It's so proud. Have you been to the United Center?
I have been to the United Center. I've been there. I actually was there I've been there I think twice for a Ranger Blackhawk game, and I was also there for a Montreal Canadiens Blackhawk game, which both are great. It's a great place to watch a hockey game.
Yes, I was there for a Blackhawks Maple Leafs game.
Okay.
A while ago,
well, that's an exciting one too.
Yes.
And you guys are getting the top pick in the draft in a few weeks here in June.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, you're getting the number 1 draft pick.
Wow.
He's a 17-year-old phenom. So you should be. Chicago's very excited about it.
That's fantastic. All right. So now, just rewinding, something you mentioned about when people you said that when people come into Midland, and the first question is not how much I need in retirement. It's about what's Midland, right? But getting to that question of, how much do I need in retirement? One thing you write in your book, which I really loved, is that it's not all about money, it's about living your best life. So talk about that and how you view financial advice from that perspective.
I think financial advice, it has to start with a why. Just like if you're a business owner, you want to create that why as why you're creating this business and why you're doing what you're doing. I think planning, you have to have that why also. And I think a lot of advisors get tied up in the whole idea of helping to plan for the quantitative portion of a person's life instead of the qualitative. And it was also a little bit, quite frankly, it was a little bit of a shot at some of the people that you see out there that talk about planning in terms of everybody should be doing this. Everybody should be doing that.
Don't buy a Starbucks because, that could be how many millions in retirement.
I don't think it's millions. I think it's like $20,000 or $30,000, So I think the other part to that is I don't believe in this whole retirement construct. I don't believe that people should think about things in such a way that they'll go to work for 40 years and then all of a sudden they get to enjoy life. There's got to be a way to enjoy life along the way, and if Starbucks is part of that enjoyment, then buy the Starbucks as long as you can afford it. So, we want to create a life by design, not by default, and create that lifestyle. and then have the money that you're creating, have that fund and be able to support that lifestyle that you want to have.
I love that. Life by design, not by default.
Yeah, I didn't coin
Gonna
it.
use that.
I stole it from somebody, but I don't know who, so I
love
can't
it.
give them credit for that.
Well, it's the old saying.
We'll give you credit.
Yeah, it's the old saying, if you take it from one person, it's stealing, but you take it from everyone, it's called research. So I'll just call that,
There you go.
I'll just call that research.
There you go.
You get as an advisor, you get to work with clients. You work with clients for a long time. We have a lot of financial advisors, obviously, that listen to the Facts versus Feelings podcast. How do I want to put this? What's one common mistake you see clients tend to make? As an advisor, you try to teach them this, but they just keep making the mistake over and over. What's something you can help like new advisors with something you've not discovered, but have seen over time with the mistake your clients make, or maybe just clients in general make?
Yeah, I think we as advisors want people to have their quantitative data really solid, like budgeting. Budgeting is something that is obviously very important to the whole financial planning process. I think most people, though, clients, families, are not very good at budgeting and having an idea of where their money's going. So, and I think they get hung up in the fact that they get hung up in the minutia in terms of they try to account for every dollar,
Right.
every cent, and then what happens is they get to a point where they get frustrated and they're like, I'm not doing this budget thing, and,
Sure.
and it gets thrown out the window completely. I think there's a happy medium. I don't think you have to account for every dollar and cent, but you have to figure out a baseline of what that budget looks like, and there's a way to do that. And you can work with the families you serve to kind of create that budget, but I think you got to not look at the specifics and drill down and make sure you're accounting for every dollar and cent, because that's where people get hung up, I feel.
Yeah, no, I can see that. That's happened, and unless you're submitting things for reimbursement. So.
Yeah, well, that's easy. and I think part of it is just the way our culture has changed, right?
Yeah.
Years ago, you used to, our parents probably had a checkbook where
Right, yeah.
the money went into the checkbook and they had to keep track of it coming out of the checkbook.
Right.
So it was very easy to get that budget. Now, who keeps a checkbook? Nobody really keeps that check register anymore. They're going to the ATM, taking money out, charging to a debit, charging to a credit card. There's
Right.
so many different avenues, and it's a little bit difficult to keep track of all that stuff these days, I think.
Speaking of that, so I'm sure you have like a wide range of clients, and I love something else you wrote in the book. Financial planning it's usually viewed as something just for the wealthy, but it's for everybody. Have you seen a difference between folks who are, on the older side, maybe baby boomers, versus folks who are maybe, younger, Gen Z, for example, like how they view money, how they react to money, and, how they think about financial decisions?
Yeah, I think the hardest thing for us is, the older the folks are that we're working with, the families we serve, the better they are at, understanding what their goals and objectives are. They have a little bit more solid ground to kind of determine what their goals and objectives are. We find with younger folks, it's hard to really envision for them. Sure. It's a little bit of a higher lift for them to understand where they want to be 10 years from now. Mm-hmm. They're thinking in much shorter time increments. Sure. So you have to meet them where they're at, right, and try to cut down those increments to shorter, more manageable ones. So I think that's a big difference that we see with the older generation versus the younger one.
That makes sense.
So you're a financial advisor. If you weren't a financial advisor in your career, what do you think you would have done, Larry?
That's a really good question, because I went into college as a pre-med major.
Okay.
That did not happen. But I thought about that, because you did show me that. That was one question I actually put some thought into before this. And I probably would have been an entrepreneur in some way. I just probably wouldn't have been a financial advisor,
Sure.
but I would have put some time, effort, and energy into creating a business. I just like the idea of adding value to the world, and I think entrepreneurs do that very well. And I joke about this very often. I feel like I'm unemployable. I'm not really a good employee, so I think that would have to be something that I would have gone down that route and been some kind of entrepreneurial entrepreneur.
You mentioned something in your book about like having a lot of people having side hustles, and your dad having one too, which was such a great story. Maybe can you talk about that?
Yeah, so my dad, I didn't come from a wealthy family. We were, solid middle class. My dad was a New York City school teacher, was a New York City school teacher. He also taught college on the side in the evenings, and then started a business. He had a snack business that he basically delivered to college bookstores and small groceries and food marts. And I used to go with him on deliveries when I was a kid. And he actually named his company Larmel, which is similar to the way I named my company. LAR was from my name, MEL was from my sister Melissa. And, it added extra revenue. And, one of the things that, still sticks with me today from an entrepreneurial standpoint is there was one summer and I said to him, hey, Dad, let's beef up your business. Let me go out and try to get you some more accounts and drive revenue for the family, because my mom was sick and, a little extra money wouldn't have hurt. And he said to me, he goes, that's great. He goes, but what happens when you go back to school and now I'm left alone? I can't service these accounts. So there were a lot of great entrepreneurial lessons from my dad, from that little side hustle that he had. And I think that, he had a side hustle before it was a side hustle, because, now it's a whole different ballgame out there.
Know your capacity. That's a very important lesson for all of us.
100%.
Yeah, my father owned an auto parts store, multiple, in Springfield, Ohio, growing up. So I saw the entrepreneur, being your own boss, having employees, and it was interesting to see. Now, of course, I work, in the corporate world. I'm thrilled to be here, but I saw that my brother owns a toy store on his own.
Which I need to make a trip out to see.
Yeah, my brother kind of got that entrepreneurial spirit. Not that I don't have that, but anyway, it's just kind of neat the way you see that. Cool. Now, Larry, you do have a new book. Sonu, we're on YouTube. Maybe hold it up. Larry, tell us again the name of it, where people can get your new book there.
Yeah, it's Financial Planning Made Personal. What did you do today that brought you joy? And it's available on Amazon. It's an easy read, and I think it's applicable both to families as well as advisors. I think it might give them a different viewpoint about how to look at the families they serve and what they're doing for them every day.
So again, we're on location in Omaha at our Spring Partners Summit. And I was talking, not you last night, but a different partner who's looking at writing a book. And I just want to talk about Carson Group for a little bit now. And he pointed out he was at a different firm, and they said, listen, if you want to write a book, we're going to make you do this, just jump through hoops. Now, we all deal with compliance. But I hope the answer is the way I think it's going to be. I hope Carson Group worked with you on this book. Believe me, there's always compliance, always hoops. But how was that process of writing a book, working with the Carson Group and the compliance side of things? Did they work with you, or they hold you back? Because I've heard different places will hold you back on these things.
Yeah, prior to joining Carson Group, I was an independent RIA, so I had no affiliation with a corporate RIA or broker dealer. And I heard the stories, and I was with an independent broker dealer a long time ago. I know the old adage, compliance is the business prevention department,
right.
That whole joke. But the reality is here, it hasn't been the case.
Right.
I mean, it was literally the easiest thing. The hardest thing was writing the book. I basically got it all compiled. I provided it to compliance, and within a few days, literally few days, I got some comments back. And there were maybe 5 or 6 different things that needed to be adjusted, not even, gotten rid of, just adjusted. Some of the wording was a little bit too, I guess, promissory.
Sure.
So we just amended that, and then it was approved. It was really the easiest process. And I will go one step further in saying that, having a podcast, having the book, and doing a lot of marketing as an advisor here has been incredibly easy in terms of building a partnership with the compliance team, and working with them has been incredibly easy and much better than I could have ever imagined.
Let me do one more, then some you can jump in. Yeah. So let's talk a little more about Carson Group here. So what I hear, I get to work with advisors every day. I've worked with advisors for almost 8 years now. What I hear a lot of is some advisors are at a place just too big, right? Too big, they're kind of just lost at sea, they're not getting the support they wanted. Some are at a place too small where they don't get the support they need. They're not getting the help, they feel kind of lost there. Talk to me about where Carson Group, it sure feels to me like it's kind of in the middle, where we're big, but we're not so big you're going to be lost. And there's a lot of support in the sense of community that we have felt the last 3 or 4 days here in Omaha, I think is off the charts. Just the way our partners really are all on the same team with Carson Group. So talk to an advisor who's maybe looking around saying, I'm not too happy where I am, why they should consider joining what we are all creating here at Carson Group?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, Ryan. I think the biggest piece that I talk about all the time is that community piece. As I said earlier, I was an independent RIA, prior to that with an independent broker-dealer, and I never felt that kind of sense of community before. And now I feel like I have 800 plus people that I can go to for support and guidance and things that I may not know. So that's been hugely beneficial, and I think that is really the best thing. And one thing that we are seeing, it has grown over the years, Carson, since we've even joined. And I will tell you, it continues, that level of support and feeling of community continues. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge going forward, but at the same time, the biggest opportunity, because if it continues the way I think it's going to go, all those advisors out there, I think they have to give us a look as a result.
Well, thank you. So we've got time, probably, Sonu, for 2 or 3 more questions. This is the Facts versus Feelings podcast, live on location from Omaha at the Spring Partners Summit with Ryan and Sonu, joined by our good friend, Larry Sprung. Sonu, take it away.
I mean, we were talking about advisors in our community, and Ryan and I always talk about investing in markets, and we're deeply rooted in the minutiae of, what's happening day to day, what economic data comes out. You all are one step removed from that, and clients even more so. So when they're turning on CNBC, they may see headlines, things like that. How do you talk to clients about, what's happening in markets and giving them perspective? Because they're all, investing and, knowing their why, and that's what that's what matters, right? So how do you talk to them about?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I mean, a lot of what I get is from these two folks here. I mean, I utilize a lot of their commentary. I could share with the listeners a couple weeks ago. I had an inquiry about some very specific interest in. I think it was either the PPI or the CPI data that was coming out, and the family wanted some talking points, and I wanted a better understanding. I had a high-level understanding, but I wanted a little better understanding, and I reached out to Sonu, and we got on the phone, and we had a probably 10 or 15-minute conversation. I got off that call really feeling confident and comfortable having the conversation on my own with the family, and did that. So I leverage what I see and what I hear, and then also the content, which is incredible what you guys are putting out to help us facilitate those conversations and make families feel comfortable and understand that we're on top of things. And it's not, it doesn't just rest on my shoulders. Sure. You're right. We have a team behind us, aka you guys, who are helping us out to deliver that to the families we serve.
Thank you for that.
Well, we love hearing that, and I hate to say, I'd almost do it for free because we all want to make a little money, but working with Sonu every day and the amazing investment research team we have here at Carson, our little bubble of research, it's just so much fun every day to work with our advisors and help your clients. And now maybe it isn't always fun. I started in July and the market went straight down until October. That wasn't the worst. That wasn't the best time to start a new job as a market strategist, but now that things are looking a little better, it's been more fun. One question I always like to ask this, mentors. Who's a mentor of yours over the years, and what have you learned from them?
Yeah, so I mean, I've had a number of different mentors over the years, and I'll say this point blank. Ron was kind enough and gracious enough to write the foreword for the book. He was somebody that I've been following for probably 10 years plus prior to joining Carson Group, and I don't think a mentor, in my opinion, doesn't have to be necessarily somebody that you have a lot of one-on-one conversation with. It could be somebody that is just a leader in the profession and following what they're doing and seeing what they're talking about. And he's been really a visionary, in my opinion, that has always been a little bit ahead of the curve in terms of where the profession's going, and somebody that I've followed and looked after. Another one, I could give you one other that I've kind of followed from afar also, is Dan Sullivan and Strategic Coach. He has great tools, great vision, and has been helpful for me and my practice in terms of watching them. So there are a lot of great people out there, and you can get a lot of great information from them. I think now today it's easier than ever because it's all out there for us to absorb, and then you could always do an introduction and a personal intro if you need to later on.
Absolutely. We had Ron on a recent podcast. You can go back to the library of the Facts versus Feelings podcast and listen to that interview with Ron. But again, Ron's obviously the big reason why we're all here and the way
Yes.
he's changed the industry and continues to try to change the industry. Sonu, I'm looking at the clock. I think we got one more time for you. Have one more question. I have one more question, then Larry's out of the hot seat.
Let's get a little personal if you don't mind.
Sure.
So you do a lot of work. You're a big advocate for mental health, and my wife is a psychologist, so that, it deeply resonates on that level. And both of you have actually dealt with loss recently as well. So, and that's hard, especially you're an advisor. I'm sure people come to you, and there are financial upheavals that come across with that, right? But just talking about the mental health piece, how do you get into it? How do you view it? How do you talk to people about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that just being able to have those conversations with folks is important, because if you can speak about it openly, and I've spoken about my family situation, losing my brother-in-law at the age of 27 to suicide, it's opened up the availability for families to feel comfortable that if they're having mental struggles or challenges, they feel comfortable saying something to me, because they know that I'm somebody that can understand to some degree. Sure. I may not understand exactly what they're going through, but I understand, what it can cause and how it can affect a family. I really think, where things are going, and I talk about this in the book as well, is there's really these three legs of a stool now. You have your financial health, which is the quantitative data for, making sure you have money for retirement. And then you also have your mental health and your physical health, and they're so intertwined with each other that if one's failing, it really affects the others. Sure. So we had a family that last year the husband was out of work for a while, and he was having some struggles, and called me, said, "Who can I turn to?" And I can assure you that I would never have ever gotten that phone call if it wasn't for the fact that I'm so open about it. And so what I say to advisors is, have those tough conversations, be vulnerable. It'll only build deeper relationships and put you in a situation where you'll know everything that goes on in your client's life, and it won't be when they come to your office, hey, everything's great. And, window dressing. You really want to know how they're feeling, because that's going to affect everything else you're helping them with.
That's great. But I guess time for the last question. What excites you about our industry in general for the future, next 10, 15, 20, 30 years? Is financial advisors helping people, kind of reach their goals, find joy? What are some things that excite you?
Two things right off the bat is I think I think the number one is technology. Okay. I think technology is going to be hugely impactful to our profession. It's only getting better every single day. And I think what's even better is what that technology is going to allow us to do, which I think is going to allow us to serve more families, in a better way, go deeper with them, and be able to help them solve problems, either that they know they have or problems before they even know they have them. Sure. So I think that that's going to be one of the greatest opportunities that we have in the next 5 to 10 years. And if technology has ever proved anything, it's that it'll probably even happen more quickly than that, because it's changing so fast.
Maybe build on that just for a second. I've heard from advisors all over the place, technology is a problem. Talk to me from your point of view about the technology at Carson Group. I mean, it sure feels like we are almost a technology company along with a financial institution. I mean, we're on the cutting edge, it seems like, but from the advisor's seat, when you talk to friends and other people at different places, how does our technology rank?
I think the technology is fantastic. I mean, I think everybody's searching for that one platform that's going to integrate with everything, okay? Right. So are we there yet 100%? No, but I think we're well ahead of where everybody else is, and I think we're just getting better. I think one of the most fascinating things for me about Carson Group that was said yesterday, and I talked to a couple of partners about this, is you go to a lot of these conferences with other organizations within the profession, what have you, and it's always painting this, rosy picture. Everything's amazing, and not that everything's not amazing here, but I think that it's so refreshing that people here are saying, hey, listen, we're not 100% perfect. We're doing really good. We're not 100% perfect, but we are doing what we need to do to get where we need to be, and we're progressing there. And I think that being vulnerable like that and being honest, I think is amazing. And seeing that, we the advisors know when they're being told something that is not necessarily 100% factual and maybe window dressing. But at the same time, we also appreciate the fact that, hey, we're not perfect. Nobody is. But we're striving to be, and we're working in that direction, and that's what I see here every day.
That's great. I know the founder of Netflix, not Hastings, the other one, and I don't remember his name, had a quote, and I'm going to paraphrase it, but if you're not willing to disrupt your company, someone else will.
Right.
And I think Carson Group understands that you have to disrupt yourself to continue to grow and be on the cutting edge. And just when I get to talk with advisors, I hear all the time, our technology is really, really good relative to everyone else. And working with advisors as long as I have, if technology is not good, everything else falls apart, is the way to put it. So, all right, so Larry, that was a quick half hour, wasn't it?
It was.
How your legs feeling? Your legs feel? They still hurt?
Feel
you?
better now.
Minutes? Yeah.
They feel better now since they're like haven't moved for a while. But I'm sure getting up.
Hopefully you can get up.
Well, thank you so much, Larry, for joining Sonu and myself on the Carson's Facts versus Feelings podcast. All the listeners out there, hopefully you enjoyed it. I know I did. I know Sonu did.
Yes.
We really appreciate your partnership and your friendship, Larry. And everyone, just listen next week. Sonu and I will be back talking markets as always. So everyone, take care. Goodbye. Thank you.
Information provided on Facts versus Feelings with Sonu Varghese and Ryan Detrick are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. The statements and opinions of show guests may not be reflective of CWM LLC or its affiliates. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested in directly. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. No strategy assures success or protects against loss. To determine what may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, financial or tax advisor prior to investing. Guests on Facts versus Feelings are not affiliated with CWM LLC.